All right, so away from the sporting activities, let's talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta's graft legacy, where the fight against runaway theft of public resources has remained one of the biggest headaches for President Uhuru Kenyatta. The president's tough talk and a redefined war against graft, spearheaded by a dream team of the DCI, DPP, the ESSC and the Attorney General, has seen several strides in the graft war. Now, several high-profile individuals have been arrested and charged over the loss of public funds, but there is little to show for it when it comes to convictions. Our senior reporter Rita Tinena reports on the mega scandals that have rocked the Jubilee administration and Uhuru Kenyatta's graft war strategy.
When Kenya's fourth president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, took over the reins of power on the 9th of April 2013, it was on the backdrop of rosy promises and heightened expectations from Kenyans.
So help me God.
The pair of Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, then bosom buddies, put in place a government to steer Jubilee's agenda. Key on Uhuru government's to-do list: engage in a war against graft.
It is not going to be business as usual.
An all too familiar war that the country has been trying to fight for decades, with just how to exorcise the ghost of corruption remaining an elusive formula for successive governments. The president promised a bare-knuckle fight against the vice.
In view of the oath of office that I took as the President of the Republic, let it be known that today I draw the line. No one will stand between Kenyans and what is right in the fight against corruption and other monstrous economic crimes.
But barely 3 years into office, and some of his foot soldiers found themselves on the wrong list after being implicated in corruption and abuse of office. Lands CS Charity Ngilu, Transport CS Michael Kamau, Labor CS Kazungu Kambi, Energy CS David Chirchir, and Agriculture CS Felix Koskei. They were suspended and later replaced. The EACC months later cleared them of some of the graft accusations. The allegations against the high-ranking officials of the Kenyatta administration were to be followed by several major scandals, albeit the president's anti-graft chorus.
We must fight corruption. Like colonialism was defeated, so too we shall defeat corruption.
The newspaper headlines perhaps illustrate the corruption battles the Jubilee administration has been grappling with. And even when US President Barack Obama visited Kenya in July 2015, he painted a picture of the effects of corruption.
Across the country, one study shows corruption costs Kenyans 250,000 jobs every year. Because every shilling that's paid as a bribe could be put into the pocket of somebody who's actually doing an honest day's work.
Obama came with some advice on how to handle theft of public resources.
This is not just about changing one law, although it's important to have laws on the books that are actually being enforced. Here in Kenya, it's time to change habits and decisively break that cycle, because corruption holds back every aspect of economic and civil life. It's an anchor that weighs you down and prevents you from achieving what you could.
With hundreds of graft cases in court and dozens being investigated, President Uhuru Kenyatta turned the heat on officers tasked with spearheading the graft war.
Mimi silindi ufisadi. Ni nyinyi mumeshindwa kufanya kazi yenu. Pesa mumekosa, semeni. And I'll be swearing in your new Chief Justice tomorrow. Ni nini ingine mnataka? Wewe. Ni nini unataka? Sema. Ni nini umekosa? Na kama umekosa, ambia Wakenya ile umekosa tukupatie. Alright? IG na DCI, semeni nini mmekosa. ambayo imewazuia kuprosecute.
Major scandals have tainted Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure.
It is unfortunate that under President Uhuru Kenyatta, we have seen mind-boggling corruption.
In 2015, one of the oldest organizations established just a year after Kenya gained independence, the National Youth Service, was embroiled in a 791 million shillings scam. A scandal that the first Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Planning, Anne Waiguru, was linked to. Waiguru resigned from the cabinet in November 2015 following mounting pressure.
I have therefore, following my doctor's advice, requested His Excellency the President to relieve me of the responsibilities of Cabinet Secretary, Devolution and Planning.
The scam saw former Principal Secretary Peter Mangiti, former NYS Director General Nelson Githinji, and more than 24 people charged in court. There was the 250 billion shilling Eurobond scam, a financial scandal relating to the handling of Kenya's sovereign bond, which critics claim 140 billion shillings remains unaccounted for. The 2016 Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, left in their wake a 55 million shillings scandal. Sports CS Hassan Wario and Stephen Soy, who headed the Kenyan team, were found guilty of misuse of public funds. Wario was sentenced to a 6-year jail term or a 3.6 million shilling fine, and Soy got a 10-year jail term or a 103 million shilling fine. Then there was the multi-billion shilling Aror and Kimwarer Dams scandal. Treasury CS Henry Rotich and his PS Kamau Duge were alleged to have inflated the cost of construction from 46 billion to 63 billion shillings. President Uhuru Kenyatta cancelled the 22.2 billion shilling Kimwarer Dam project following revelations that it was overpriced. But he gave the green light for the construction of the Aror Dam. The corruption scandals ran into billions of shillings. The alleged 2.8 billion shilling standard gauge railway compensation scam, the alleged 1 billion shilling irregular payment for the procurement of 100 portable clinics, which were left lying idle at a yard in Mombasa for years, and the alleged 1.5 billion shillings irregular procurement of a revenue management system by the NHIF. The Kenya Medical Supplies Agency also earned a slot on the graft list following the 7.8 billion shilling scandal involving the procurement of COVID-19 emergency supplies. Leaders such as former Governor Ferdinand Waititu and former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko, chiefs of government bodies, among them Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Power, NEMA, and the Rift Valley Development Authority, had dates with courts.
Auditor General's report is full of irregularities, straight up possible corruption, that can be used as a basis for investigation. So his fight against corruption has been terrible, and unfortunately for him, it's a bad legacy for him. It's a very, very bad legacy for him.
Despite the court cases, there is little to show for it when it comes to convictions.
How long should one corruption case take to start and to be dispensed with? Is it a year, a decade, or a generation?
If there's one issue that has frustrated me, it's this issue. The pressure is on me. Do something about corruption. Then I sit back and I ask myself, okay, show me an administration since independence that has taken action on corruption like I have done.
Kenyatta in January 2021 revealed that the country loses at least 2 billion shillings daily due to corruption. Keen on fighting graft, Uhuru was banking on a team.
We set up a multi-agency so that we can coordinate our affairs. Still no movement. I sit with the Chief Justice, please, why don't we expedite this? Still no movement. As Justice Kihara, I've just heard him sitting there saying, I wish that there would be a way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, guilty, innocent, If guilty, charged. Nothing.
The Attorney General, Githu Muigai, came under fire for what critics termed as failing to advise the government accordingly.
The pressure that I am putting, especially on the state law office, is that they must up their game. We cannot afford to lose any more cases.
The work of the state law office is not to tell somebody to do something. It is to advise them. We advise. Then the client does what they want.
With little progress in the graft war, President Uhuru Kenyatta moved to revamp the war on graft. He set up a dream team, which he tasked with spearheading the war on corruption. Director of Public Prosecutions Nuruddin Haji, Director of Criminal Investigations George Kinoti, Attorney General Paul Kihara, and Ethics and Anti-Corruption boss Talib Mbarak.
These are the troops. I am the general.
I'll be a safari ant together with Kinoti Nuruddin, and we shall kill that snake called corruption.
The team set off with vigor. Dozens of arrests were made, several on Fridays in what was dubbed Kamata Kamata Fridays, where suspects were arrested on Friday and held in custody over the weekend before being arraigned in court on Monday.
Selective prosecution, targeting predetermined individuals and projects, steamrolled by a narrative of convenient lies and falsehood and propaganda, is not a fight against corruption.
But the tag team would soon start encountering roadblocks, including court orders that prevent investigations, arrests, and prosecution of suspects.
Some of the frustrations which really pull us down is some of the strange orders that we receive. Other than even starting the investigation, we are stopped even before we record a statement from somebody who you know very well are stolen from Kenyans.
Judgments of the courts that allow for the return to office of persons charged with corruption.
I have been fighting to ask those people that we have charged to step aside. They must step aside.
Arrests and prosecutions aside, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission continued the search for the perfect formula to deal with corruption, exploring asset recovery as a way of tackling corruption.
When asset recovery will be very, very effective in the long run, it will act as a deterrence of looting. People will know that whatever they are accumulating, they are silently accumulating on behalf of the state, because one day it will revert to the state.
That prosecution is not necessarily the only solution to the problems that we are faced with, especially when it comes to issues of graft.
Kenya signed bilateral agreements with Jersey, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom to help facilitate the return of proceeds of corruption to Kenya.
And today, as you say, we signed an agreement to ensure that any proceeds of corruption in Kenya that end up in the UK will be given back to the Kenyan people and spent for their benefit.
Uhuru Kenyatta, it appears, was ready to take any measure in the graft war. When his younger brother, Moho Kenyatta, was linked to the sugar importation saga, the president left him to carry his own cross.
People are out there bandying my brother yesterday. Me, I've said, if he's guilty, aendele. What is the problem?
From the tough talk, setting up and facilitating agencies to help in the fight against corruption, Kenya's youngest president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has spared no effort in the graft war.
Unataka nifanye nini jameni? But I have not done.
To critics, what we need is strong institutions. We need strong institutions that if corrupt people get into office, they are weeded out by the system. That the system punishes corruption. And until we get that right, there's nothing of anti-fighting corruption. You fight corruption by having strong institutions, giving those institutions the necessary power to deal with corruption.
Raila Odinga had a controversial suggestion to deal with graft.
Follow the route of Mr. Magufuli. People are in jail in Tanzania. Mr. Kagame took his own brother to jail, and we would go to visit him on the weekends in jail. Say, yes, but you wrong the country, and this is where you belong. That's when you will be able to rein in this animal called corruption. But if other people are untouchable, then the so-called war against corruption is all rubbish.
Just days before he leaves office, Kenyatta admitted that he left graft perpetrators go scot-free.
Mama ambaye hacheki Martha Karua na ambaye hata gojea kusikia mambo ya hawa waporaji wakifanya mambo yao huku na huku. Magakoro makomete theingi titani kumuohera. Ojo dage mohera.
The war against graft has no doubt proved to be one of the biggest headaches for President Uhuru Kenyatta, his administration failing to exorcise the ghost of corruption. And the war will still be on the to-do list for the incoming government as it tries to win the same war decades later. Rita Tinina, KTN News.